So I'm here up at Upper Lakes Kananaskis. It's one of my favorite places to come to, and it's a place where my wife and I love to bring our kids. It's close by to our home in Calgary, and it's a great spot to get out into the mountains, into the beauty of nature very quickly. Now it's shortly after 4:30. Sun's already out. Did a little bit of walking meditation in this morning, and I figured I'd steal away from the campground, hoping there was no bears to run into, and do a little bit of doodling, watercoloring, and trying to get some writing done. We're at the tail end of summer here, and it is much colder. It's the toque beanies for the Americans out there, and gloves. And I really wanted to watch the sunrise as well. You can start seeing some of the purples and the pinks just starting to hit as the sun is peeking out from the trees in front of me. And I'm using a permanent ink pen, 0.3, to sketch in my beautiful backdrop. I saw one young woman out here with her dog emerging from the forest off to the left, which you can't see. I was a bit surprised, and I think she was equally as surprised to see me. But ultimately, I've got the place to myself, otherwise. And I'm going to try and capture the ever-changing sunrise in a multitude of colors and array of beautiful light hitting the mountains. Start filling in some details in my trusted traveler's notebook. A couple of interesting things about this lake. One, there is a dock that does feed into the lake here, so people can go kayaking, use their power boats, and get into the lake. The lake itself is quite large, actually. It's about 7.8 kilometers squared, I think, if I remember correctly. And it's a natural lake, but it has been heightened by the use of hydroelectricity. So they dammed off a certain portion back in 1936, and it raised the upper lake level by 13 meters. So it is quite deep as well. It's about 100 meters or so deep at its deepest points. And the sun's really starting to peek out now. And that pink is just so gorgeous. I love watching sunrises in the mountains. It's one of the most mesmerizing things one can do, in my humble opinion. And the neat thing about the Upper Lakes, there is a 17-kilometer long trail around the Upper Lake you can hike, and there's a lovely fun video about that, which I've previously done. But you can also take your powerboat or your canoe, kayak, and you can kayak or canoe or boat, I should say, across the lake to a backpacking campground called Point Campground off in the distance. And my wife have hiked into it. We've never boated in. It's a lovely place. Now, this is my first time actually trying to create some detail of color in a sunrise using my watercolors. And I'm trying to play around with different variations of shade, but also trying to preserve the blue aspect of the lake itself. So I'm just having fun with it. My sketch is fairly simplistic. I was just trying to capture more the grandiose nature, the feeling tone of waking up to a sunrise in the mountains. It's interesting actually to try and watercolor with my gloves on too. I think this is my first time doing that as well. But I think I'm doing alright. Actually, the upper lake was dammed in 1932. I'm just looking that up. And interestingly enough, most of the water entering the upper lake is actually stored from spring until October, and then the water is, or some of the water I should say, is released between March and October. And then most of the drawdown happens from November to February, and this is all for hydroelectricity. And they've got buoys in the lake to indicate just how much variation in height the lake goes to and from with respect to the water usage. And aside from boating across and hiking around, I see many people fish. There's picnic tables on the other side. People come out for day trips, doing a little bit of a bonfire in the fire pits by the lake on the other side there. And for us camping nearby, it's only an hour and a half away from Calgary, so it's fairly close. And the thing I like about the Upper Lakes in particular is there's a lot of hikes in the Canadian Rockies where you hike quite a bit or quite far in with quite a bit of an elevation and you get to a beautiful, pristine mountain lake. And the upper lake, and the lower lake actually, lower lake just being down the road here, and maybe someday I'll do another video on that. But these lakes give you the exact same feeling, and they're accessible by car. Which I suppose has its upsides and downsides in terms of accessibility and environmental usage. But the water is absolutely clear. And this whole scenery is breathtaking. I've seen people try their hand at stand-up paddleboarding out here too. It can get quite windy, so I'm always impressed when they do that, especially in those windy conditions. That's something I'm going to have to eventually try myself one of these days, is stand-up paddleboarding. I've been fascinated by it. I have a slight phobia of fish and sea creatures. That has unfortunately stood in the way of my ability to just jump in, so to speak. But that's a story for another time. And this is the second last day of our camping trip out here. Actually, sorry, the last day of our camping trip. It's the end of August, and just really enjoyed watching my kids take in this astounding landscape around them. I think as a family we've done really good this year with respect to trying to get out and trying to get our kids exposed to the great outdoors. We've had some pretty epic hikes on this trip. Accidentally followed a goat trail on one of the hikes, an unofficial hike, which was funny because we ended up doing a little bit of mountain climbing and ended up in a boulder field. And I've already done a video recording about Chester Lake as well, our hike up to that. Once again, just really impressed with my 3 youngins who range from 8 to 3 years old who have kept up with the amount of hiking that my wife and I like to do, and they love it. So getting in this last detail with respect to the lake, I'm spending a lot of time on this. As you can see, I'm really trying to figure out how to get the right color shading. Maybe I'm being a bit persnickety about it, but It's hard to capture some of the amazing beauty one can see, at least for me. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm trying to increase my skill as we go. I actually navigated away from photography into trying to do landscape drawings and paintings, but doing landscape drawings and paintings has inspired me to take more photos. Took off my gloves, the sun's in full force. It's gone from about 4 degrees this morning up to about 8. 4 degrees Celsius to 8 degrees Celsius. And I'm using my trusted Pilot Metro pen, which I find can take quite a bit of an abuse with respect to being outdoors and hiking and all that fun stuff. So I think I'm going to leave it there for today. Hopefully this paper is dry enough with some of the amount of water usage I've put into the watercoloring. I'll talk about that in a couple of other videos with respect to inserts and things like that, which I'll include a link to at the end of this video, and you're welcome to check out. I think it's alright with respect to trying to capture that beauty, so I think I've gotten close. So I think I'll head back to the campground, tell them about this amazing sunrise, and get some breakfast going. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Take care.